In a world where titles speak volumes and achievements carve pathways, what happens when who you are is utterly dismissed simply because of how you look? Today, we tell the gripping story of General Isabella Vance, a woman who rose to the pinnacle of military command, only to face her greatest battle not on a distant battlefield, but in a dusty, forgotten gas station in the heart of America. This isn't just a tale of injustice, it's a raw, unfiltered look at the insidious nature of prejudice and a powerful testament to the unwavering spirit of those who refuse to be silenced. Get ready, because what happened to General Vance isn't just her story. It's a stark reflection of a struggle many black men and women know all too well, and it might just make you question everything you thought you knew about authority, dignity, and the true cost of being unseen. Bella had seen the world from angles most could only imagine. From the dusty, chaotic streets of Baghdad where she'd navigated peace treaties, to the icy winds of the Bering Strait coordinating joint exercises, her resume was less a list of accomplishments and more a chronicle of nations, crises, and lives she'd touched. She was the one who could walk into a room of hardened combat commanders and command respect with a single knowing glance, the one who could simplify a complex geopolitical crisis into actionable intelligence, the one who, against all odds, had climbed to a rank where, by all accounts, she should have been unassailable. Her journey wasn't just hers. It was a silent triumph for every little black girl who'd ever been told her dreams were too big, every marginalized voice struggling to be heard in a chorus of privilege. She was a living, breathing testament to the idea that true leadership transcends gender, color, or background. But here's the quiet, often unacknowledged truth about breaking barriers. You don't just clear a path. You carry the weight of every expectation, every hope, and every lingering doubt. You're not just leading troops, you're living a symbol, and symbols by their very nature are vulnerable. Today, that weight felt particularly heavy, compressed into the silence of her government-issued sedan as she navigated the endless, sun-drenched highways of Arkansas. General Vance wasn't heading to a gala or retirement ceremony. She was en route to Ramstein Air Force Base Annex for a critical, classified briefing, details so sensitive they could shift the balance of power on a global scale. This wasn't just a meeting, it was the culmination of months of delicate diplomacy and strategic maneuvers. And as the miles melted away, so did the signal bars on her secure satellite phone. A crucial, real-time update from the Pentagon was trying to come through, voices urgent, clipped, talking about sensitive movements and immediate tactical adjustments, but the connection was faltering, cutting in and out like a bad dream. She needed a clear signal, and fast. You see, for someone like General Vance, whose world revolved around precision and control, this unexpected technical glitch was more than an inconvenience, it was a threat to the mission. Her mind, accustomed to processing threats from hostile territories, was now singularly focused on one seemingly innocuous problem: cell service. She wasn't thinking about the dusty towns she was passing, or the quiet judgments that might lurk within them. She was thinking about troop deployments, about the fragile stability of a region teetering on the brink. This was her battlefield now, and her only weapon was a secure line. Little did she know, the real battle was about to begin, not on a faraway continent, but right here, in the unassuming heartland of America, where the greatest danger wasn't an enemy combatant, but the unseen enemy of prejudice. It was a truth she, despite her rank and achievements, was about to confront head-on, proving that sometimes even the most formidable armor can't protect you from the insidious, everyday assumptions of strangers. And that's precisely where our story takes its first, unexpected turn, as General Isabella Vance, focused on securing a nation, inadvertently pulls into a small gas station that will ignite a very different kind of conflict. The GPS chirped, alerting General Vance to the next exit. Just ahead, a faded sign, the paint peeling like an old memory, read, "Lose quick stop, fuel and bites." It wasn't pretty. The cracked, uneven lot, dotted with potholes and stray weeds, spoke of years of neglect. A couple of pickup trucks, their occupants leaning against worn fenders, swapped stories in the humid Arkansas air. To Isabella, it was just a place, a temporary solution to a pressing problem. She pulled her sedan to the far edge of the building, away from the handful of locals gathered near the front, hoping for a sliver of quiet, a moment of undisturbed signal. She grabbed her secure device, a piece of technology that held the weight of untold secrets, and stepped out, raising it to her ear. "General Vance, verifying identity, initiating briefing," she stated, her voice low and professional. A stark contrast to the sleepy hum of Harmony Creek. The Pentagon officer on the other end responded immediately, critical information flowing. But not everyone saw a general. Not everyone saw a woman on a professional call. Behind the counter of Lou's Quick Stop, Darla May was watching, mid-50s with a tight blonde bun that seemed to mirror the permanent frown lines etched around her eyes. Darla May had seen a lot of things in Harmony Creek. Mostly she saw what she expected to see. And what she saw now was a black woman, casually dressed in jeans, plain sneakers, a loose olive-green jacket, and a ball cap pulled low over her short twists. No uniform, no badge, just a phone. To Darla May, this didn't scream distinguished military officer, it whispered something far more sinister to her prejudiced mind. Trouble. This is how prejudice ignites, not with a bang, but with a silent, biased judgment. It's a snap decision, born from ingrained stereotypes rather than objective observation. Darla May didn't consider the expensive, high-tech device Isabella held, or the professional cadence of her voice. She didn't consider that someone might be on a confidential work call. All she saw was a black woman who didn't look like the folks who usually stopped around here. It was the same insidious mechanism that had led to countless other incidents across the country. A birdwatcher becoming a menace in a park. A student waiting for a friend becoming a trespasser in a coffee shop. In mundane moments, when we are simply existing, prejudice can transform us into whatever someone wants us to be, rather than who we truly are. It's a common, heartbreaking pitfall, where the absence of a uniform allows ingrained biases to flourish. Darla May, without a second thought, picked up the old landline behind the counter. She kept her voice low, a conspiratorial whisper so the few customers wouldn't overhear. "Yeah, we got a suspicious woman out here by the pumps," she muttered. "Real shady. Might be on drugs or something, acting strange. You all better come check it out." She hung up before they could ask too many questions, already convinced of her own narrative. Across town, the call crackled over the radio in a Harmony Creek police cruiser. Officer Boone, mid-30s, buzz-cut and barrel-chested, rolled his eyes. His younger, leaner partner, Officer Jessup, mirrored him with a smirk. Nothing much ever happened in Harmony Creek. They didn't mind stirring the pot a little if it broke up the boredom. It was a chance to break the monotony, a chance to exert some small-town authority. They threw on their sunglasses, jumped into their cruiser, and sped toward the station, sirens silent but intent. Meanwhile, Isabella remained by her car, laser-focused on the conversation unfolding on her secure line. The Pentagon was relaying crucial, time-sensitive information, details that couldn't afford to be interrupted. She had no idea that trouble, real, blinding trouble, born not from geopolitical strategy but from petty prejudice, was already on its way, racing towards her with flashing lights that would soon shatter the quiet dignity of her moment. And as those lights would appear, they wouldn't just signal the arrival of local law enforcement, they would herald the painful collision of two vastly different worlds, one bound by duty and honor, the other defined by suspicion and ignorance. Just as General Vance reached for her next set of orders, a flash of red and blue erupted, reflecting off the greasy windows of Lou's Quick Stop. The world around her seemed to tilt. The Harmony Creek cruiser screeched into the lot, gravel spitting like an angry serpent under its tires. Isabella instinctively lowered her phone for a second, squinting at the flashing lights. Two officers, Officer Boone and Officer Jessup, burst out of the car before it had even fully stopped. Boone, the taller one with a buzz cut and a barrel chest, unhooked his holster with a quick, practiced flick. Jessup, leaner, younger, and radiating an unsettling eagerness, mirrored his partner. Both of them moved with the coiled tension of men looking for a fight, not a conversation. Isabella felt the air around her tighten, growing thick with unspoken hostility. Calmly, she placed her secure phone on the hood of her car, making sure her hands were visible, palms open. Her voice remained measured, controlled, just as they had taught her at West Point all those years ago. "Good afternoon, officers. How can I help you?" she asked. Boone barked back, his voice cutting through the humid air. "License and registration, now." Isabella took a half step forward, slowly reaching for her wallet tucked into her back pocket. "Absolutely. My ID is right here. I'm active duty military, General Isabella Vance. I'm on official business." Jessup scoffed, a sneer twisting his lips. "General, huh? You expecting us to believe that?" She pulled out her military credentials and federal travel orders, extending them toward the officers with steady hands. What happened next was a gut punch that no amount of combat training could prepare her for. Boone snatched them away, barely glancing at the documents, the very proof of her identity, her service, her decades of sacrifice, before shaking his head. "This is fake," he declared, tossing her ID onto the hood of the car like trash. Isabella blinked, stunned for the first time. "Sir, I assure you—" "Shut up," Jessup snapped, his voice sharp with dismissive contempt. "You think you can play us, lady? You picked the wrong town for that." This wasn't just disbelief, it was a deliberate act of invalidation. It's a common, insidious tactic used against the marginalized. Deny their identity, dismiss their truth, and then exploit their powerless position. General Vance, a woman who commanded respect on a global scale, whose word carried the weight of nations, was being reduced to lady and accused of lying simply because of who they perceived her to be. It's the profound violation of dignity, the stripping away of earned honor, that leaves the deepest scars. A small crowd had begun to form. Customers, station workers, drivers who'd pulled in for gas and decided to stick around for the free show. Some whispered, some laughed. But no one stepped in. No one questioned the officers. Isabella's training screamed at her to de-escalate, to remain calm, to follow protocol. But every instinct also told her that these men weren't looking for answers. They had already decided who she was, and worse, what she wasn't. She tried again, her voice low and even. "Please, contact your supervisor. You're making a serious mistake." But Boone already had handcuffs in his hand. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." Isabella didn't move. She stood her ground, not in defiance, but because something inside her broke loose, something heavy, something that had been tightly controlled for years. "I am a general in the United States Army," she said, her voice sharp now, slicing through the tension. "You are unlawfully detaining me." Boone actually laughed, a loud, mocking laugh that echoed against the gas pumps, loud enough for the watching crowd to hear. "Yeah, and I'm the president now. Turn around." Before Isabella could say another word, Jessup grabbed her arm roughly. Boone forced her other wrist behind her back. The cuffs snapped, tight enough to pinch the skin. Isabella clenched her jaw, swallowing the flood of humiliation that rose up hot and fast. Somewhere behind her, the secure phone, still connected to the Pentagon, clattered to the ground. The voice on the other end, now hearing only chaos, started yelling her name. But the officers didn't notice. Or maybe they just didn't care. Boone shoved Isabella against the side of her rental car, hard enough to rattle the door. "Got her," Jessup said, like they'd just caught a prize. Isabella, breathing hard, stared straight ahead at the greasy window of Lou's quick-stop. Her reflection, fractured into pieces by the dirt and grime, stared back. In that moment, she wasn't a general. She wasn't even a person to them. She was just someone to be thrown around because they could. But miles away, in the quiet hum of the Pentagon, alarms were already blaring. General Isabella Vance's sudden disappearance wouldn't stay unnoticed for long. The call might have dropped, but the connection to justice was about to get a whole lot stronger. Back at Strategic Operations Command in Washington, D.C., the secure call from General Vance had gone from strange to alarming in under 60 seconds. Lieutenant Commander Ava Thorne, sitting behind a wall of monitors, stared intently at the blinking line labeled Gen Vance Secure. The audio feed was a mess, background noise, scuffling sounds, voices shouting words she couldn't quite make out. Then, nothing but static. Ava leaned closer to the mic. "General Vance, this is Command Operations, do you copy? General Vance, respond." No answer. She glanced up at her supervisor, Colonel Elias Dubois, who was already striding across the floor, his jaw tight. "Ping her location," Dubois ordered, his voice cutting clean through the hum of the operations center. "Right now." Within seconds, a technician pulled up a blinking dot on a map. It was nowhere near Ramstein Air Force Base. She was stalled at a gas station right off Highway 171 in Harmony Creek, a speck on the map most Pentagon staff had never even heard of. This was more than just a dropped call. It was a critical breach, a potential national security incident. A general on a secure line suddenly cut off? The implications were staggering. Dubois leaned over Thorne's shoulder, grim. "Get Ramstein security on the line and patch me through to Jag. If something's happened to Isabella, we're moving immediately." The military's response system, a finely tuned machine built for crisis, had been activated. They didn't need to know the why yet. They only needed to know the where, and that one of their own, a highly valuable asset, was in distress. Meanwhile, back in Harmony Creek, Isabella was sitting on the curb in handcuffs, her back to the grimy wall of Lou's Quick Stop. "What's your real name?" Jessup asked, looming over her like a bad dream. "Who you working for?" Isabella exhaled slowly through her nose. "You have my ID, my travel orders. Everything you need is right there." Boone snorted. "Lady, you're about 2 seconds from being booked for obstruction. Don't push it." Isabella said nothing. She wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing her beg. Out of the corner of her eye, she caught people pulling out their phones, recording, whispering. Even Darla May, the manager, stood by the door with her arms crossed, smirking, like she was watching a backyard wrestling match. The whole thing was spinning out of control, and nobody seemed interested in stopping it. Suddenly, Jessup's radio crackled to life. "Dispatch to Unit 3, confirm you have detained subject." Boone grabbed the radio off his belt. "Affirmative. Female, early 40s, refusing to cooperate." Another pause, heavy with static, then, "Be advised, subject is flagged federal. Repeat, flagged federal. Pentagon has initiated emergency contact. Release immediately and await further orders." The blood drained from Boone's face. Jessup's smug grin vanished. "What the hell?" he muttered. Isabella, still sitting on the curb, said nothing. She just stared up at them, waiting. The power had shifted, abruptly and decisively. The local bravado withered under the cold, unyielding hand of federal authority. Boone fumbled with his keys, unlocking the cuffs without meeting her eyes. He muttered something that sounded halfway between sorry and ma'am, but didn't have the backbone to say it properly. Isabella stood up slowly, flexing her wrists where the metal had dug into her skin. The crowd was dead silent now. Even Darla May's smirk had slipped. Isabella picked up her phone from the ground. The screen was cracked, connection lost, sensitive information possibly compromised. She looked at both officers dead in the eye. "You're going to regret this," she said quietly. "Not tomorrow, not next week, today." Boone opened his mouth like he was about to argue, but a new set of flashing lights lit up the parking lot. This time it wasn't local cops. It was a convoy of black SUVs from the Federal Protective Service, tires screaming against the asphalt. But Isabella wasn't waiting for backup. She was already gathering herself for what needed to happen next. The cavalry had arrived, but for Boone and Jessup, their personal war had just begun. The doors of the black SUVs from the Federal Protective Service swung open almost in unison, like something out of a movie. But there was nothing glamorous about the way Major Anya Sharma and her team moved. It was pure urgency, grim-faced efficiency, and clipped orders. Major Sharma, mid-40s, sharp-eyed, crossed the lot in long strides, a folder tucked under one arm, her gaze locking immediately on Isabella. "General Vance, are you injured?" she asked, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent lot. Isabella shook her head once. "No, Major, minor abrasions." The bigger injury was to their careers. Boone and Jessup shifted nervously, realizing a little too late just how deep they were in. The other FPS officers quickly closed ranks around Isabella, positioning themselves between her and the Harmony Creek cops without even being asked. Major Sharma turned to the local officers, stone-faced. "You are hereby ordered to stand down pending federal investigation. Any further action on your part could be construed as obstruction of justice." Boone stammered. "We didn't know who she was." "That's not an excuse," Sharma cut him off. "You had documentation in your hand. You had everything you needed." Jessup, still trying to play the tough guy, mumbled, "Still, she was acting suspicious." Sharma stared at him for a long moment, then said quietly, her voice laced with chilling authority, "You saw a black woman on a phone call and made a choice. That choice is going to follow you for the rest of your life." The FBS team efficiently bundled Isabella into one of the SUVs, making sure she was seated comfortably inside. As the convoy pulled away, Isabella glanced back once, just long enough to see Boone wiping his forehead with a trembling hand, and Darla May scurrying inside the station like a roach under a kitchen light. Inside the vehicle, Isabella didn't say much. She stared out the window at the endless stretch of highway, her thoughts racing faster than the SUV. Major Sharma broke the silence after a while. "Pentagon's coordinating a full investigation, ma'am. Internal Affairs, Civil Rights Division, it's going public, whether Harmony Creek likes it or not." Isabella didn't nod. She didn't smile. She didn't flinch. "They should have known better," she said simply. Sharma nodded in agreement. "They're going to find out what it feels like to be seen for who they really are." The convoy sped on, past fields of tall grass and leaning telephone poles, toward the Air Force Base, where Isabella's authority and her dignity would finally be recognized again. But Isabella knew the real battle was just beginning, and this time, the whole country would be watching. News of the incident hit national headlines before Isabella even finished her debrief at Ramstein. Someone had posted the cell phone footage online, raw, grainy video showing two local cops handcuffing a woman who calmly explained she was a U.S. Army general. No shouting, no resistance, just the unmistakable look of someone being stripped of dignity by people too blinded by arrogance to see it. It spread like wildfire. By morning, Harmony Creek wasn't just a dot on the Arkansas map anymore, it was the center of a growing national outrage. Networks ran the story on repeat. Commentators shook their heads in disgust. Civil rights leaders called it a clear case of racial profiling and abuse of authority. Even veterans organizations, usually careful not to wade into political waters, issued statements demanding justice for General Vance. Back in Harmony Creek, the police department scrambled to do damage control. Chief Robert Hayes, a man more familiar with hunting deer than handling press conferences, stood in front of a sea of cameras, sweat beading under his cowboy hat. "We regret the misunderstanding," he stammered, avoiding eye contact with the reporters. "The officers involved have been placed on administrative leave pending a full review." A young reporter from Little Rock cut him off mid-sentence. "Chief Hayes, why were trained officers unable to recognize military credentials clearly presented to them? Was race a factor in this so-called misunderstanding?" Hayes stumbled over his words, muttered something about high tensions and mistaken identity, but everyone watching knew the department was cornered. They had no real defense. Meanwhile, Boone and Jessup had gone radio silent. Their names leaked within hours, splashed across headlines, social media, and public outrage forums. Anonymous sources from inside the department revealed that both men had prior complaints. Excessive force, racial profiling, swept neatly under the rug before. Not this time. Civil rights attorneys from New Orleans and Washington, D.C. filed official federal complaints on Isabella's behalf. The Department of Justice opened an independent investigation. Even the Arkansas governor weighed in, calling the incident an appalling miscarriage of justice against a national hero. It wasn't just about Isabella anymore. It was about every person who had been doubted, dismissed, degraded because of a uniform they didn't wear, a color they couldn't change, or an assumption they couldn't stop someone else from making. At Ramstein, Isabella was briefed constantly, her lawyers, Pentagon officials, even White House liaisons calling for updates. She answered every question with the same steady voice she had used to command troops in war zones. But when she was alone in the quiet of her quarters, the weight of it pressed hard against her chest. Not because she was surprised, but because after all the medals, after all the service, after all the sacrifice, in a dusty parking lot in Harmony Creek, none of it had mattered. Still, she hadn't spent her life running from battles, and she sure as hell wasn't about to start now. But if Isabella was going to speak, she knew she had to do it on her terms. Not just for herself, but for every silent face watching her from the shadows. The press conference was scheduled for noon on a Saturday, outside the gates of Ramstein Air Force Base. Cameras were already lined up in neat, frantic rows, microphones stacked 2 and 3 deep. Reporters murmured into phones. The air was hot, thick, buzzing with a different kind of energy, the kind that meant something important was about to happen. Isabella Vance stood behind the podium, wearing her full-dress uniform, for the first time in months. Medals gleamed against the deep blue fabric. Her shoulders were squared, her gaze unflinching. She wasn't here to entertain. She wasn't here to make anyone comfortable. Major Sharma stood off to the side, arms crossed, watching protectively. A few senior Pentagon officials flanked him, grim-faced. They had offered Isabella carefully worded talking points, diplomatic phrasing, a safe path through the minefield. She politely declined. When Isabella finally spoke, her voice was clear enough to cut through every rumble of traffic, every click of camera shutters. "My name is General Isabella Vance," she began. "I have spent 29 years serving this country, leading soldiers, advising presidents, defending the ideals written into the Constitution." She paused, letting the words hang in the heavy air. "Yesterday, in Harmony Creek, Arkansas, none of that mattered." She continued, her voice gaining a quiet power. "I was judged not by the content of my character, not by the uniform I've earned, but by the color of my skin and the assumptions made about me because of it." Reporters scribbled furiously, but Isabella wasn't speaking for them. She was speaking to the people who had seen the video, who had felt a familiar pang in their gut, a sharp memory of being doubted or demeaned or dismissed. "I'm not here today for an apology," she said, her voice resolute. "I'm here because silence is not an option. Accountability matters, respect matters, human dignity matters, and none of these are negotiable based on someone's prejudice or someone's ignorance." Behind the cameras, members of the local community had gathered, black families, veterans, students holding handwritten signs. Isabella caught glimpses of their faces, some angry, some hopeful, all of them waiting for something they hadn't seen enough of lately: real leadership. "Injustice is not new," Isabella continued, her gaze sweeping across the crowd. "But change only happens when enough people refuse to look away." She finished with no dramatic flair, no rehearsed slogan, just the truth. "I was not humiliated yesterday, they were, and history will remember it that way." She stepped away from the microphone without waiting for questions. The applause started small, a few claps from the crowd, but quickly grew into something real, something alive. As she made her way back toward the base, Isabella didn't walk faster or slower. She moved with the same steady pace she always had, one step after another, carrying more than just her own story on her back. Because she knew the world wouldn't change overnight. It might not even change in her lifetime, but maybe, just maybe, it would change a little. Because she refused to stay quiet. When you're treated unjustly, your voice is your greatest weapon. Speak the truth, even when your hands are shaking. Someone out there needs the strength you show. If you believe in standing up for dignity and accountability, share this story. Speak up when you see wrong. Change starts with people willing to call it by its name. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think, made you feel, then please hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message, and subscribe to our channel for more tales that challenge, inspire, and remind us of the incredible human spirit. Your support helps us amplify these crucial stories. Thank you for listening. Perhaps you've felt that sting of being dismissed, of having your identity questioned, of being judged before you even speak. General Vance's story is a mirror for so many, a stark reminder that even the highest achievements can be invisible to eyes clouded by prejudice. Her refusal to back down, her insistence on speaking her truth, became a blueprint for others. She didn't just survive, she galvanized. Her story also underscores the vital importance of documenting injustice. That grainy cell phone footage wasn't just a video, it was undeniable proof. It bypassed the usual bureaucratic stonewalling and allowed the truth to burst into the national consciousness. We, as individuals, have a powerful tool in our pockets. Use it wisely, use it safely, and use it to hold power accountable. Beyond documentation, what can we do? Support civil rights organizations that tirelessly fight these battles in courtrooms and communities. Engage in local conversations, challenging biases in your own circles. Most importantly, demand better from our systems and our leaders. Vote for change, advocate for reform, and never allow the comfort of silence to overshadow the urgency of justice. May her story inspire you to find your own voice, to demand your own dignity, and to know that even in the most obscure of places, the truth will always find a way to echo. There's no more thanks for watching. Please like and share the video, and social networks will be right back to you as fast as we can. See you next time.